Yes, oh my.
I can't find my fuse.
I left half of the stuff I prepared to speak on today. I left half of it at home somewhere, so. But half the time I just go off on my own anyway. So
abruptly somewhere.
yes, you won't notice any difference if I had it in front of me. So welcome to First Universalist of New Madison on this beautiful spring day, nice and cool. Chaz did turn the heat on, so. Hopefully everybody's comfortable. Feel free to leave your jackets on. Do we have any announcements? Crystal will be back. I think we settled June 23rd. I can't remember. It's Crystal will be back in June, and I'll let you know when we get closer to it. So we had a good time. She does a really good job. Really enjoy her presentations, and I think it went really well, so we'll get her back as soon as we can. And then Derek will be back. I don't have his date yet, or if I do, I don't have it with me, but Derek will be back every month too. Okay, we're talking about, actually Roberta brought me a paper, which I think the paper's here somewhere, about Ross Douhut. Ross is a columnist for the New York Times and did a thing on the naive gospels. These are we're talking about the Gospels in the Bible, obviously in Christianity. There are the synoptic Gospels, and those are Matthew, Mark, and Luke. And then the full Gospels, all four Gospels, are John, and we'll do a little bit of investigation on that. But what we're going to be talking about basically is context. You know, what Gospels mean in the context when they were written, in the context when we're reading them, and as the context as culture changes. All right, our prelude is Blessed Assurance. Our chalice lighting is a flame to light our path by Deborah Burrell. Fire consumes and casts a bright light. May our chalice flame consume our regrets for the past, our fears about the future, and our worries about today. May it light for us a path of joy and peace. Opening hymn is 42, Morning So Fair to See. Morning So Fair to See. That's the music is Schlesische Volkslieder. That's a German tune from 1842. It is traditionally German. If you look at the words, waking spring, spirit spring, brave and strong, resound with life. It's a very happy lyrics, very upbeat lyrics. The music is not what I would call really upbeat. So you've got to kind of mix those together. And we'll do a little bit on context here. Tall are the verdant trees. If you didn't know what verdant means, you can get an idea of spring and tall, and that means verdant means probably green or fresh or blooming or something like that. That is the value of context. You can extrapolate from something you do know to include something that you didn't know to put them together. Okay, our affirmation, Toward a Place of Wholeness by Viola Abbott. We are Unitarian Universalists. When we lift up our 7 principles, some of us think of them as a form of theology, but they are more important to our collective than that. They do not tell us what we should believe. They tell us how we should be. They tell us how we should act in the larger world and with each other. We are brought here today by the fact that Unitarian Universalism has fallen short of the image that was presented to the world and to many of those who embraced this religion. But we are also brought here today by the truth that Unitarian Universalism has shifted course to move toward a place of wholeness, a place that perhaps never existed before for us as a denomination. It is a long and sometimes unforgiving road to today, but we are here today because we are mindful of that past and because we have hope for the future. We want the practice of this faith to be a fulfilling manifestation of its promise. Open your hearts, seek new ways of understanding. I don't have the context for that presentation. Obviously, it was a time of trouble for the Unitarian Universalist. Some things were changed, some things were challenged, but the idea remains the same for Unitarian Universalist. We look and see what we have, we take the best of what we have and we apply it to the future, and we try and see what we have that is not correct, is not right, is not helpful, is not supportive, and we try and minimize that or put it back farther away from us and move toward the positive and the better. So once again, we're talking about context. Our children's story is empathy. And we'll see if it'll play.
This book is read with permission from Diane Albert.
A Little Spot of Empathy, a story about understanding and kindness. Written and illustrated by Diane Albert. Hi, my name is Empathy. I'm here to help you understand the feelings of others so you can create a connection, make a friend, and show people you care about them.
How will you do that?
By showing you the power of your thoughts. We all spend a lot of time thinking about ourselves. We think about what we want, what we need, and how we feel. It's important to care about ourselves, but sometimes we forget to think about the feelings of others.
I need, I feel, I will, I want, I think.
It can be hard to understand what someone is thinking and feeling. That's why we need to try and see things from their perspective. Perspective is the way someone looks at something. For example, look at this picture. Both of you are looking at the exact same thing, but you're each seeing something different. That means you have different perspectives.
It's a crayon. It's a house.
You can even be in the exact same situation as someone else and have a different perspective.
I'm angry she has my toy. Wow, I found this amazing toy. It's mine.
Looking at a situation from the other person's perspective can help build a connection instead of causing conflict.
Maybe she didn't know it was my toy. I wonder whose toy this is.
Now that you have learned a little bit about perspective, you can use that knowledge to try and feel what another person is feeling in a situation. That is called empathy. I think Feeling Detective could help us out here.
Hi, I'm Feeling Detective. I'm great at spotting feelings.
Empathy takes a lot of practice. The more people you meet, the more feelings you can spot, and the easier it will be for you to show empathy. As soon as you find a feeling or emotion spot, ask yourself these 3 questions. What could this person be feeling? Have I felt that way before? How would I want to be treated? It looks like Feeling Detective found a spot. So let's practice the questions. What could this person be feeling?
I can see his mouth is turned down into a frown, and his eyebrows are turned up. He looks sad.
Why do you think he is feeling that way? Maybe he doesn't know how to play soccer. Maybe he feels left out. Maybe he wanted to play something different. Maybe someone was mean to him. Be curious. Learning more about others is a great way to show that you care about their feelings. Listen. This will help you understand how to help them.
Hi, how are you doing? Are you okay? I feel sad. I don't know how to play soccer.
Now that you discovered what he is feeling, think, have you ever felt that way? Even if you have not been in the exact same situation, you can still imagine what it would feel like to be them. You can show empathy with your words to let that person know that you are trying to feel with them. Here are some ideas. I understand how you feel. I felt that way before. That would make me sad too. Now that you have an idea of what to say, it's time to show empathy with your actions. How would you want to be treated if you felt that way? This will also help you learn how to be kind.
I felt that way before. Is there something else we could play? How about we swing at the playground? That sounds great.
So the next time you spot feelings around you,
I'm feeling scared. I'm feeling sad. I'm feeling mad.
take the time to show some empathy.
I'm mad because I don't like making mistakes. I understand. I don't like making mistakes either, but it helps us grow. I'm sad because I miss my grandpa. That would make me sad too. Can you tell me more about your grandpa? I feel scared riding a bike without training wheels. I felt that way before. Do you want me to help you?
Can you imagine how great the world would be if we all showed empathy and kindness? I can't wait to see you start practicing empathy.
Hope you like our video. Please subscribe.
What do you think?
I think that music was driving me crazy.
You think the music was driving you crazy?
I thought it was.
Why do you suppose they had music in the background? It's something to kind of mask the background of the voices, to provide context, to provide some kind of support. And if you notice the music, it kind of changed when she was talking about someone having pain or someone feeling lonely. Music conveys feelings. Music is emotion. We all know that. That's why we love music, particularly in church. And that's partially what an artist does when they create these little videos. They use music, and you can see in movies, if you watch the movies with the sound off, or just listen to the voices and not the music, Star Wars or any of those music, half of the scenes don't have any impact at all, because it's the music that tells you what's really going on. It's the music that's challenging you or scaring you or making you feel happy. Music does all that. That's why I can't think of the guy's name who's the famous composer who's done like 1 million movies. That's why he is so revered in Hollywood, is he can create any emotion out of a musical score. Pretty incredible. Okay, joys and concerns. Oh, I forgot, the tulips are pretty much done. There was a few left, but they were pretty bedraggled. But the lilacs are in, and my smeller is not working very good. Hopefully you can smell these. If not, you can come up and get a little closer to them. My wife assures me they do have the lilac scent, so lilacs this week. We'll see what happens next week. Joys and concerns. We'll light a candle for Cecil. She hasn't been with us for a couple weeks. She's got an earache today is the problem, so hopefully that will be better and she can come back and join us sometime in the short future here. Every week, it's a new place, 2 places, 3 places. Anybody know where the last one was? Texas. A guy obviously has no empathy. He was out shooting his AR-15 in the front yard, and the neighbors, a Honduran immigrant family with a bunch of kids, came over and asked him over the fence, could he mind stop shooting at 11:30 at night because his baby was trying to go to sleep. So what did he do? He took his AR-15 over and shot the whole family. 5 of them are dead. 2 of the mothers died trying to protect their children. Their bodies were found on top of their live children. And this guy is still at large in Texas. How many times do we have to go through this? How many times? And this is Texas, and I haven't heard anybody say everybody shouldn't have an AR-15 in Texas yet. Maybe they're saying the Honduran family should have had an AR-15 and shot it out with him when he came. Does that make any sense? I mean, this is crazy. Right, we still have our sunflowers. Ukraine is, the last thing I heard this week was the Russians launched missiles, munitions factories. There's nothing, there's not even infrastructure. They just targeted 2 apartment buildings and killed 23 people who were asleep in their beds at 5:30 in the morning. The insanity goes on all around us, and that's what we're looking for, is a way to deal with that. A little bit of empathy on everybody's part, maybe. Okay, anything else? Yes.
If you get a chance, go out and see the spring flowers, the wildflowers. You'll be very fortunate. And get yourself a decent book too that has flowers in it. You'll see a lot more wild geraniums, spring beauties, white and yellow trout lilies, Virginia bluebells, which are out there, and so on and so forth. I just discovered a wild geranium in our backwoods there. So, with all the crap going on, I mean, I was driving down here and found myself getting angry. Some Nimrod had something about Snyder mark about the book. I can feel myself like in the cartoons, the thing goes up like a thermometer, and I thought, I need to stop. Just take something. Oh, and I haven't seen them yet, but these are really kind of neat. They're Dutchman's breeches. Do you know what those look like? Do you know what they look like? Mm-hmm. They look like underwear. They really do. Violets are out, and so enjoy nature. What the heck? Why not?
Enjoy the flowers. They just had a posting from the Dark County Parks. I got to talk to them too. They were going to come speak to us was it 2 years ago? However long it was before the virus, and then nobody went anywhere with the virus. So I'm sure I can get them to come back and speak to us some Sunday. I'll have to call them. Anyway, there was a posting. They're now having dog walks at all, I think there's 7 or 8 Dark County parks spread throughout Dark County, or preserves, or whatever they call them. And you can sign up and take your dog on a dog walk through the park. You get a paw print to remember it by, and it goes into a little book. And once you complete all 7 of them, they give your dog a Dark County park bandana and a little treat. So if you have a dog and you like to walk, speaking of dogs, that's a concern. My neighbor at the lake, some relation of his had to move to a assisted living, and they wouldn't let her keep her dog. So she's got a little tiny dog. It's bigger than a Chihuahua. He says it's a miniature dachshund, not dachshund, but miniature Doberman pinscher, miniature pinscher. It looks nothing. I think somebody sold them a bill of goods. It's just a small dog, but it's a nice little dog. It's house trained and everything else. They gave it to a friend on Facebook. That friend decided they didn't want the dog, and they gave it to somebody else. And that person, they decided they didn't want it. They dumped it out in the country. But it had a tag on it, so the humane shelter called the original owner. And my friends up there went to the shelter and paid $100 to get the dog out of the shelter. And they've already got a dog. So anybody that wants a nice little friendly 7 or 8 year old dog that sleeps in the bed with you and house trained, doesn't eat much. If you know anybody that we could trust to actually keep the dog, if you don't want the dog, please bring the dog back. Don't just dump it in the country. I can't believe people that do stuff like that. No empathy whatsoever. All right, so I would like and I don't even know they told me his name, but I don't remember it. But he's fixed. Everything's got all the shots. Everything is done with him. So,
Are the trees more beautiful this spring, or am I just noticing them more? On the drive down here, the trees are just,
I think you're noticing them more.
they're beautiful.
And I guess we could light a candle for anybody who suffers from allergies. There was a big news report. Allergy season starts 2 weeks earlier than it did like 5 or 10 years ago, and it lasts 4 weeks longer. The changing in seasons has really affected that. And everything is staggered. So different trees put out different pollen, or different flowers put out different pollen. So it depends on which one you're allergic to. The recommendation from the medical profession is if you get tested and know which pollen you're allergic to, you can follow the pollen list and it'll tell you which trees or which flowers are blooming, and you know when to take precautions, maybe stay inside, start your medication earlier, they said. If you take allergy medication, start it 2 weeks before the allergy season starts. Life is getting more complicated all the time. Right, anything else? Yes.
Just like I mentioned, in terms of wildflowers, and they are indeed beautiful this year, just lovely. If you don't have immediate access to them, obviously Dark County parks, but many of you are probably familiar with the All Wildflower Garden, nationally renowned garden, and I was there a while back, and it's spectacular, and it will continue to be. It's so easy to reach. Just go to Inglewood, cross over the dam, turn right after you cross over the dam, and it is the most beautiful garden, nationally ranked garden, courtesy of the All family, the late Marie All, who passed away at the age of, I think, 105. And it's a public garden and just beautiful.
And if people would be interested, I could see we could do that as a church outing after church some Sunday. We could bring a carry-in, like picnic type thing. I think at the park down there, I think there's places where the shelters
Across the road, yes.
across the road where we could actually have a barbecue and do the whole thing. So if anybody would be interested in that, let me know and we'll see about setting that up. All right, one final candle for those thoughts and desires, those fears, those trepidations, those concerns that you're not able to speak. Maybe you're not even really aware of them. Maybe they're just kind of lurking in the back of your mind. You have those restless dreams at night. Your spouse says, I hear you talking, but I can't understand what you're saying, but you're thrashing around in the bed. If you can bring those out or bring those up, we will support you in any way that we can. All right, our message, the Gospels in context. This is from, Roberta brought me the article from the New York Times. Ross is kind of an interesting guy, and I'll give you the context of what we're talking about there. Actually, context, does anybody want to give me an example, your example of context? Context is kind of a nebulous thing. It's a little slippery and hard to get a hold of. The one that popped into my mind, and I'm a little perverse, I guess, was if Hannibal Lecter said, I'd love to have you to dinner. That would be context is what's important. I'd love to have you come to dinner. For Hannibal Lecter means you'd probably be on the menu. That's not what normal the rest of us would think if we wanted to invite someone to come to dinner. That's the difference that context makes. It can change the entire meaning of a thought, of a sentence, of a action completely. And that's the importance of context. You see that a lot in jury trials, criminal trials. They'll try to point out the context of what happened and why the person is not guilty when maybe they are guilty. All right, so context for Ross. He grew up in a Pentecostal family. You all know what Pentecostal is. Their faith, it's like Assemblies of God, Richard Baker, Tammy Faye Baker and Jim Baker. What is important in worship is experiencing the worship. Hands to the sky, high energy, lots of singing, speaking in tongues, not a lot of thought, understanding. You accept what is told by the preacher and you're energetically involved in it. It's a time to get your adrenaline flowing and feel that relationship with the fellow people you're worshiping with. That's where Ross grew up as a family. That's what he started out with. Then, as he became more educated, and that is the enemy of Pentecostalism or fundamentalism, is education, science thinking, critical thinking. The more you think about things, and that's what he calls deconstruction of religion. I don't really know what deconstruction is. All I can understand from what I've read is it's applying science, it's applying critical thinking, it's looking at religion in the Bible and the stories of the Bible, saying the walls of Jericho came down. Was there an earthquake at about the time this story supposedly happened that would explain why the walls of Jericho came down? The great star in the heavens over the birth of Christ, was there a supernova somewhere in the universe that would have put a big star in the sky? These things are things that people who want to have faith but still want to understand the world, and they want to combine the two, put together. People who do not want to have their faith interrupted by thought, because as we know as Unitarian Universalists, the more you think about something, the more it's going to change. Nothing stays the same forever. The more you know, the more you understand, the more you can shape what you believe in, and the more you can refine it and hopefully make it progress. So, the high energy services, I think I may have told you this before, but I'll go ahead and do it again. We were at Cedar Lake, first going to church with our foster kids and our kids. We had the high school Sunday school class. So we thought it would be interesting to give those kids, our kids, an experience, an expression of what life was like for other religious groups. So we asked permission and visited the Catholic Church in DeKalb County. We visited the Lutheran Church. We visited a fundamentalist Pentecostal church. We visited a United Church of Christ. Like every other Sunday, we would go to another church. Interesting. The Catholics were basically all insular. They were in the service by themselves. There wasn't a lot of community that we saw. The service was very rigid and formalized, but it was a lot of fun, a lot of kneeling, a lot of standing. And they didn't care if you followed along or didn't follow along. Everyone was welcome. You couldn't take the Eucharist. You couldn't go up and because if you're not a true practicing Catholic, and I don't know all the rules, but we just sat in the back pews and watched. The Lutherans, I'm sure you've heard that Lutherans are kind of distant German, kind of cold people. We were not even acknowledged as being there. They were passing the plate, and when the wine and the bread came by, they just went right by us. They didn't even see if we wanted to offer, because they didn't know who we were, and they knew we weren't part of the church, so we weren't even included. Nobody said hi. Nobody said, "What are you doing here?" No. And the pastor knew we were there, and he didn't announce that there was a group visiting from another church. It was just like we were invisible in the back pew, which was interesting. The Pentecostal people, a cement block church out in the middle of the country with a gravel parking lot. Really nice people. Luckily, there were no snakes that day, but it was a high energy service. They were very friendly, very open, and very much probably originally from Tennessee, Kentucky, Virginia. They were not native to northern Indiana, as far as we could tell, but very, very nice people and very welcoming, but a very different service. So context of the religion you believe is what's really makes the difference in the long run. So Ross, as he got educated, and he's a really intelligent guy, you have to be an opinion writer, essay writer for the New York Times, he graduated from Harvard, and then he went to Yale Law School. Very bright guy. I don't know what his business background was, and I don't know how he ended. I think he ended up as a writer for a couple different magazines before he ended up at the New York Times. But he still has his faith in religion, and you know how hard it is to be an intellectual and still be religious. So this is what his little article is about: is being naive and reading the Gospels. And we'll do a little bit of. He goes through this a little bit, but his is more of the philosophy of the Gospels, but I found it kind of interesting, and if people want to do more of this, we can go in more into the Gospels if you have an interest in understanding it. But there's a complete difference in the Gospels as you go along. These are the Synoptic Gospels, and these are the three that talk about Christ as a living being that were written shortly after Christ's death, within 100 years or 200 years. The Gospel of John was written much later. So, Matthew, a Jew evangelizing Jews, the fulfillment of Old Testament prophecy. Jesus is the Messiah. Jesus fulfills the law, which is important in Judaism. The scribes and Pharisees are condemned, as that's the part that we remember as Protestants considerably. Church appears only here. Strongly apocalyptic. That's the last books of the Bible where the end doom is foretold. Teaches the Gospels 7s and 3s. I don't understand that, and I forgot to look it up, so I'll have to bring that back to you later. And the emblem is the lion. Jesus is king. The Gospel of Mark, the first essential gospel, it's basically Jesus' biography. In the Gospel of Mark, Jesus is fully divine and fully human. The first expression of that, the Son of God, who is not only God, but also a human being together. Vivid eyewitness details, unpolished, enthusiastic style, historic present, which means it's supposedly a historic presentation. He quotes Jesus' Aramaic words, or the actual language that Jesus spoke. The realistic gospel, and the emblem is man, Jesus is human. And then Luke is a Gentile evangelizing Gentiles. This is as Christianity spread and grew beyond evangelizing or trying to convert the Jews who do not accept Christ as a Savior. Judaism is still a separate Old Testament religion, and Christianity is the New Testament religion. So as they kind of gave up on converting Jews to Christianity, they turned to Gentiles or people who have other religions, pagans or whatever, or no religion. So it became a universal gospel. A gospel of prayer became in. Luke had more respect for women. That's when Mary Magdalene, if you know the story of the tomb at the Easter, Mary Magdalene was the first person that Christ revealed himself to. And that was always kind of to me, a little bit funny. Mary Magdalene went to the tomb and went in, and the angels were there. And she said, "Where is my Lord? What happened to Jesus?" And he was standing behind her and said, "I am here," he said, "I am," which is a really strong term in the Bible. I am, meaning I am everything. I am the one. I am the Lord. And in my kind of perverse mind, I can see Mary jumping, turning around and saying, "Jesus Christ, you really scared me." Sorry. Okay, Jesus befriends outcasts and sinners. Jesus' ministry touches the Gentiles, and the emblem is the calf. Jesus is the sacrifice. That's kind of the separation, the quick thumbnail change on the Gospels. If you're interested in doing more of that, we can proceed on that farther. And this is another with John included. Portrait of Jesus is the king in Matthew, servant in Mark, teacher in Luke, and the Son of God in John. The original readers for Matthew were the Jews. For Mark, there's a little question about thinking the Romans. For Luke, it was the Greeks. And for John, it was the wide church or the Gentiles. The key phrase in Matthew is kingdom of heaven. In Mark, it is immediately. It was the one that was the actual live historical recounting of what happened. In Luke, it is the Son of Man. And in John, it is to believe. The prominent sections would be in Matthew's sermons. In Mark, he concentrates on the miracles. Luke concentrates on the education of the Bible through the parables. And John is somewhat the same. The parables are teachings, but he concentrates more on the teachings. The genealogy, in Matthew, he's traced back to Abraham. In Mark, they don't even talk about the genealogy. In Luke, he's traced all the way back to Adam in Genesis, and John does not talk about genealogy. In the geographic emphasis, the emphasis on the ministry of Jesus in the Galilee for the Synoptic Gospels and Judea for John. And the time sequence, only one Passover mentioned during the ministry of Jesus in the Synoptic Gospels, and 3 Passovers plus an unnamed feast in John. So there is a tremendous difference. If you just sit and read the Gospels, there's a tremendous difference between each Gospel, the things they relate and don't relate, and that would be another whole presentation if we want to do that. So, what I'm getting to with Ross is he went through all this, he studied the Gospels, but what's happened was there are fewer people going to church, fewer people are Christians. We're down to, I think, 40% or 30% of the people go to church every Sunday now, or at least once a week. It's not necessarily on a Sunday because Catholics go during the week. But the percentage of believers is going down markedly, and the percentage of believers for older people like us is still pretty high, but the percentage of believers for younger people is negligent. It's hardly there at all. The younger you are, the fewer people believe, which kind of shadows and is the history of religion in Europe. They seem to be a little bit ahead of us culturally. So they have state religions in Europe. In Germany, the Lutheran Church is the state church. Everybody pays a little tax to support the minister in the church. But the only time anybody goes to church is to get married and get buried. Nobody, I mean literally nobody goes to church on a Sunday. The churches are practically deserted. But they still have an organized state religion. So Ross is kind of reacting against that, and what he's saying is, because deconstructionism, or what happened with modern science, people started to say, as I talked about Jericho, they started to look at history, they started to do archaeology, particularly in Israel. The Jews are really good at doing archaeological studies. When they dig up the Shroud of Turin, they do scans, they do x-rays, they do little tiny analysis of all the chemicals of the pollen in the cloth. People want to know, is that really the shroud that Christ was wrapped in, or is it some 13th century recreation that some priest came up with to make money for the church? I'm kind of leaning toward the latter, but nobody really knows yet, and they keep studying and studying, and that's the advance of science. Electron microscopes are getting better. They can tell the age of the cloth, they can tell if it's blood, if it's real blood. But as people get more and more intelligent about studying religion, they kind of lose their faith, or their faith becomes kind of rounded off. It's not as sharp and as lively as it was. So what Ross is promoting, or what he's hoping, or what he's maybe understanding, is what he calls a naive understanding. When people were kids and went to church and people talked about religion all the time, you absorbed belief. You just absorbed faith through your culture. Nobody explained anything to you. You just heard it every Sunday, and it just became part of your being, and you believed it. And then you lost some of that when you got an education. Because people aren't exposed to it now, what he's hoping is they will read it with a naive, childish, young approach again. They will read the Gospels, see the feeling and the humanity and the reverence that goes with the Gospels, and won't be applying the science, the history, the deconstructionism that's kind of demolished them before. I think that's more of a picture of who Ross is, of Ross trying to decipher how to live in a world that is not of his making. It didn't, and as Roberta can say, I can give you the article if you want to read it. It's very convoluted. It's an article written by someone who's very intelligent and has basically wrapped himself, this is my opinion, has wrapped himself up in knots, trying to make something that's almost not understandable into something that he can say, I understand it, and there is a way through it, and I still have faith, and it's still a successful faith. It's kind of interesting. It is fun to read, and it is very instructive to read, but I'm not sure it's a path that I would follow. So, as context, I want to go a little bit farther on context. One of them is, we talked about Oberstdorf last week and maybe the week before that. This is the book that I was telling you about by the lady, Julia Boyd, Travelers in the Third Reich. Her first story, right out of the bat, is a British traveler in 1936 going to Oberstdorf, which was a ski resort town. It was only 400 or 500 people, but even in those days, in the towns on the Austrian border and an Italian border, skiing was something that people still like to do in the wintertime. So it was a vacation town in the wintertime. A British lady was traveling there, and in a little restaurant, a little cafe, a lady came up to her, an older lady came up to her with 2 children along with her, and said, "Are you from Britain?" And she said, "Yes." And she said, "Could you do me a tremendous favor?" And she said, "What do you mean?" And she said, "Can you take my children back to Britain? We are Jewish, and I'm afraid for the future of my children. What would you do if you were that British traveler? She actually took those kids back to Britain with her and kept them to the duration of the war. And the mother did survive the war, so the children were returned. That's something that happened in 1936. Now, put yourself in the place of you're going on vacation and you're driving through Idaho and you stop at a little McDonald's for lunch. What if a lady came up to you at McDonald's and said, I see you're from Ohio by your license plate? And you would say, sure. Hi, how are you? And she would say, can I talk to you for a minute? And you'd say, sure, why not? And she would say, what's happening? Do you know what's happening in Idaho? And you would say, not really. I mean, I know a little bit of the news. And say, this is my daughter sitting over here at the table. She's 14 years old, and we just had a home pregnancy test, and she's pregnant. And in the state of Ohio now, it is illegal to leave the state to get an abortion, and she cannot get an abortion here. Would you be so kind as to take my daughter to Washington? What would you do? You know, there's a 2 to 5 year penalty in jail for helping someone get an abortion in Idaho. If you're caught, you can be arrested and put in jail. What would you do? What would you do? I don't know. And the consequence of this in Idaho, Bonner Memorial Hospital is in the northern part. I had it written down, but I've lost my notes. The northern part of Ohio, that hospital closed their maternity and obstetric ward. The nearest place now to have a baby born in the hospital is 45 miles away. The reason? All their obstetricians left town. They've all moved out of Idaho. Because you can be arrested and put in jail as a doctor for helping someone have an abortion. So what happens if you're having a miscarriage and someone says it's an abortion and puts the doctor in jail? Doctors aren't stupid, they're not going to put up with that. So they're leaving town in droves. So it's getting harder and harder to get medical care in Idaho, to get obstetric medical care. This is like going back to the Dark Ages, people. I do not understand. Well, I'm kind of coming to understand it. These are people whose only goal, not the only goal, but one of their goals in life, one of the things that brings them pleasure is to cause pain to other people. I don't understand it. I don't understand the lack of empathy, but they seem to enjoy it. If you watch Tucker Carlson, he gets a real thrill out of causing pain to people, making fun of people. And not making fun in a lighthearted way, making fun in a derogatory, nasty, insulting way. And these people have no more, brings a satisfaction to them to tell people they can't do things. You will be punished. Everything for them is punishment, punishment, punishment. There's no support, there's no trying to help people. There's no trying to bring people up from where they are. It's push them down and make them do it my way or punish them. We see this over and over again, and I don't know what to do about it. All I can say is we need more empathy. All right. Questions, comments? Yes.
Actually, I have two at the beginning. Is I was going to ask if there was anything in the Gospels that where Jesus actually formed a church. I know that he said to Peter, you are the rock, on this rock I will build my church, and I always took that as, he was a zealot, he would die for Jesus and all that, but I never thought that Jesus actually formed a church. He actually just gave us a template for living. And if there's something in the Bible that says, yeah, Jesus said you need to be more formal for the church. I don't know if there's anything in there. I haven't seen that. Anybody else has?
I am not a Bible scholar and don't pretend to be, but I'm married to one.
If you would ask her, that'd be cool.
Yes, and I might even be able to get her to come. I should have done it. She took 2 weeks vacation, but as being vacation, she probably didn't want to come here and give a sermon. But she did agree to help me, because I said, when I told you a little story about the lady in Idaho, to me that would be a little drama thing that she could do. She could be that lady it would be, she's an extremely good actress. That would be something that's really moving, and I think people would really get something out of seeing her do that, but we didn't have time to put it together. But sometime along here, and what I'll probably do if she can't come is I'll tape it and put it up on the screen.
I got
But, yes.
one other thing too, just again, I had a question. Being, never considered myself this, but I guess I am a scientist. I've been professional since 1976. And, you know, I do believe a being, I mean, you know, but I think that, and I've said this before, God and nature are one and the same. And if a woman has a miscarriage, this is what I would consider to be a natural abortion. If it's a natural, it is because of or by the Almighty. God needs to go to jail. Why don't people bring this up? Between 12 and 15% of all pregnancies end in natural abortions.
Yes.
We don't call it an abortion, we call it a miscarriage. And I have sympathy for that. I don't mean to make light of it or anything like that. But people are not out there thinking that, well, that's a miscarriage. Well, no, that is something that's happened naturally. And again, I believe in an Almighty, a Creator, and it's by that being that is caused. And so, why do you not question that? I don't. That's all I got.
My understanding is that's part of the DNA of these people. God is never questioned. The former president, who can shoot people in the street, who can have affairs with prostitutes, who can run around on his pregnant wife or wife who just had a baby, who can steal from contractors and not pay them his bills, who can start businesses and then bankrupt them. He can take private documents that belong to the government, take them to his place and hide them. None of these people blame him for anything. He can say, let's take over the government and throw out the vote and make me president for life. None of his people, just like God, none of his people question that. None of his people hold him accountable. He is above the law. He is bigger than the law. He is the law. That's the mentality of the same people who turn around and step on the people who are below them. Those are your middle managers who delight in abusing people under them when they get a chance. That's the mentality. These people are devoid of empathy. They have no concept. And I'm sure he has no concept of empathy. It was so funny, not really. He's being sued for raping that woman in New York like 30 years ago. He said, she's not my type. Then they showed a picture of this woman, and he mistakenly said, that's Marla Maples, my ex-wife. She's not my type. You can't even tell her from your previous wife. She is your type. So, but none of that makes any difference to these people. So, I forgot, the Gospels and the questions. She will, I'm sure we'll talk and I'll ask her. And if people are interested in this, we'll pursue this. I'm kind of have a fleeting interest in it. I'm not a theologian, and I have Christian history and I love Christianity, but I'm not really a practicing Christian. I don't pray, but I still find it as an interesting cultural phenomenon. I'd like to understand it. So if people want to pursue that. The other thing I thought about we probably need to do is do the Unitarian Universalist principles. I haven't really talked about those, and I'm not really up to date on those, so we'll probably start a series on doing that stuff. So if anybody has anything that they're interested in that, let me know. Okay, I did have a map of Idaho. You can see Washington and Oregon, the two states where they can still get abortions. Montana has just passed an anti-LGBTQ whatever, where you can't even help kids transition. If a kid says when they're 7 and 8 years old, I'm a girl and want to be a girl, and I'm sure that I want to be a girl, there's nothing the parents can do. And these are people who say the parents have the right to school their kids, to do anything to their kids they want to, except that they want to do something that we don't want them to. The parents have no rights at all. This is the hypocrisy that kind of underlies the whole thing. And this is the reason science doesn't believe in hypocrisy. If you're a scientist and believe in honesty and truth, then you follow the truth wherever it goes. If it says you've made a mistake, then you reorganize your thinking and you admit your mistake and you go on to something else. Dogma is something is a movie, a fun movie, but it's not something you believe in. Okay, we'll move on here because we're Even without a page, I can still run over. Offering. If you have something and want to share with us or with the bigger world, put something in. If you need something, take something out. April showers, how appropriate. Our closing hymn is 44. We sing of golden mornings.
Oh, no idea. Words by Ralph Waldo Emerson. All right.
Extinguishing the Chalice is a power at work in the universe by Tom Shadda. I'm assuming that's the pronunciation. My friends, there is a power at work in the universe. It works through human hands. It is a creative, sustaining, and transforming power. And we can trust that power with our lives and with our ministries. It will sustain us whenever we take a stand on the side of love, whenever we take a stand for peace and justice, whenever we take a risk. Trust in that power. We are together held by that power. And I've got another slide I want to show you. Choices made in anger cannot be undone. This purports to be an actual picture. It says on the top there, a photo of a coyote leaping to its death to catch a roadrunner, 1931, New Mexico. It was the inspiration for Warner Brothers' Roadrunner and Wile E. Coyote Looney Tunes cartoons. I never heard of coyotes being that stupid, but do not leap off a cliff for something that you want to attain. So keep that in mind. And then our Between the Ears. This is in Kent, England. And if you look, they have reconstructed a primitive Arizona village to ride their horses through so they can play cowboys and Indians. They take their horses seriously in Kent, and they take being cowboys seriously. But you can tell it's England, and you can tell how. I don't know if you can see on this picture very good, but there's leaves all over the street. And you're not going to see any leaves in the street in Arizona, or you didn't in 1830 or 1840, or Wyoming or Colorado or any place else. They didn't have it.
There's all kinds of trees there too.
Yeah. So I just thought that was really interesting. They've got the doctor's office. I'm sure they've got a little saloon where you can go in and get a shot of rot gut or warm beer. So, all right, that ends our service at First Universalist. Have a good week. Please practice empathy. If you can't do it, at least be aware of it, and maybe it'll come to you naturally. Refrigerator, we haven't got a replacement refrigerator, but I do have, there's snacks back there, and we'll try to get a replacement refrigerator in for next week. So, all right, have a good week. April in Paris, where you can retire when you're 62 with full benefits.
Well,
Actually, they're changing it, yes, now it's 64. Those poor people, they don't know how good they have it.